Barcelona are in a weird place this season because while they won La Liga last year and fans are expecting further development of this Xavi project, the financial situation off the pitch means the club are extremely limited in the transfer market. While rivals are splashing huge cash on marquee signings, Barca are reliant on free transfers, low-cost options and academy prospects. So recruitment becomes less what do we want and more what can we get. However, aside from the finances, there's actually an even bigger problem facing Xavi's Barcelona, and it's a problem of the tactical variety. Those who watched a lot of this team last year will know there was a notable drop-off in performances partway through the season, and at times there was a sense of identity crisis. Many of you will have watched my video on Barcelona's identity under Xavi, but I have to admit, it left one problem unsolved. A problem that would explain a lot of last season's performances and what Xavi needs to overcome if Barca are to fight for La Liga again. I'm calling it Barca's positional play problem, and today I'm going to explain to you exactly what that is and why it's such a big deal. So if you enjoy, consider leaving a like, and let's get into it. Before we start, it turns out a lot of people love this new Barca kit, and it is nice, but if you're like me and want to rock something a little less mainstream, you should check out today's video sponsor, Sangalo. Sangalo are the official jersey sellers of some of the biggest but lesser known teams in the world. Teams like the champions of Bhutan, Para FC, or 7-time champions of Zimbabwe, Highlanders FC. It's Sangalo's mission to increase exposure to these great teams, so not only can you get your hands on rare and really unique shirts, you'll become a meaningful part of these fan bases all around the world, which I think is pretty cool. So if you're interested, check out the Sangalo website with the first link in the description, and let's get back to the video. So what is this positional play problem? Well, first of all, we need to be on the same page about what positional play, or juego de posición, actually is. I've talked about it before, so feel free to skip this, but here's a refresher for those that need it. Put in the simplest possible terms, positional play is all about creating space for your team and denying space for your opponent. When your team is in possession, space is created through positioning and movement of your players. As the name suggests, position is vitally important because it's the angles and distances between you and your teammates that allow for ball circulation. As players start to move around, those angles and distances should be retained so that players always have passing options and ball circulation is uninterrupted. The major selling point of positional play is that it seeks to automate this positioning and movement, so that you're able to create space under any circumstance and against any opponent. The automatic nature also gives the players more mental room to focus on technique. If executed correctly, positional play effectively turns a team into a well-oiled machine, where each player is kind of a cog within that machine. In other words, no movement happens in isolation. When one player moves, the whole team moves. Finally, it's important to remember that all of this synchronized movement is happening within the context of a structure, which is created by the coach. For that reason, the players must know that structure intimately, understanding their own role and the roles of those around them. This is why Johan Cruyff is known as a pioneer of total football, because players had to be very complete. As they rotated around this positional structure, they'd have to be comfortable doing all kinds of different jobs. Okay, so that's positional play, at least the in-possession part of it. And already you might be able to see just how difficult this philosophy is to implement. So let's turn our attention back to Xavi's Barcelona and his first half season in charge, 2021-22. And what we actually saw was a very good version of positional play, an unreasonably good version considering how little time he'd had. But then you realise that most of his squad was already well versed in this philosophy. Marc-Andre ter Stegen, Gerard Piqué, Sergio Busquets, Jordi Alba, Dani Alves, even Ferran Torres had all previously been coached by either Pep Guardiola, Luis Enrique, or both, two of the best modern-day practitioners of positional play. And the result was a side that understood the fundamentals and could easily take on Xavi's new version of it. The left side in particular was very fluid and dynamic, constant movement, rotation, creating triangles, and the key here isn't just movement but synchronized movement, which 1 maintains passing angles, but 2 is what makes it hard for defenders to stay with their markers. The profiles of the players also helped in that they could effectively operate in more than one zone. Jordi Alba, for example, is a great creator both from his deep starting position, where he can find vertical runners, but also from his new wide position, where he can put balls into the box. And all of this made Barcelona a very threatening side going forward. But let's fast forward to the modern day, where Xavi no longer has his core of JDP experts. And while a lot of the team is very talented, the reality is that the overall understanding of this philosophy has decreased. And I can show you that by comparing directly. So before, on the left-hand side, we had Jordi Alba and Ferran Torres. In those same positions now, we have Alejandro Balde and Frenkie de Jong. Now, de Jong is a very interesting player with regards to positional play. It's quite obvious to everyone by now that being tied down to a zone and executing repetitive movement is not what comes naturally to him. But as time has gone on, and as Xavi has tried to maximize his ability, he's been allowed a role that suits him more naturally. A deep creator who starts on the left of a 2-3-5. That's a position that has dovetailed quite nicely with the rise of Balde, who is comfortable starting effectively as a winger when Barca have possession, with a midfielder, typically Xavi or now Gundogan, inside. But while this looks good right now, the problems occur when we introduce that all-important movement. Remember, we started off with a winger out wide who could tuck inside and then create space for the fullback to overlap. But here the fullback is already wide, and he's not really comfortable tucking inside, nor is our deeper player, de Jong, really comfortable overlapping. Since that rotation isn't going to happen the other way either, we end up with a much more static system, one that finds it much harder to move the opponent around and create space. And this, in short, is Barcelona's positional play problem. By giving de Jong prominence, by phasing out the aging Alba and relying more on Balde, Xavi has, on the one hand, adapted well to his changing squad, but on the other, it's reduced the fluidity of movement on that side and thus weakened Barcelona's positional play. Here's another example featuring Balde, Ansu Fati and Xavi, where this time they do move, but it isn't synchronized. Instead of rotating to retain the triangles and the passing angles, all three of them end up on the same line. These kind of problems come from a lack of chemistry, and as Barca's squad continues to change, more of this could happen. With the loss of Busquets, for example, we're starting to see de Jong given even more freedom in build-up, dropping deep to receive the ball from the centre-backs, which in theory is fine, but remember, in positional play, when one player moves, the whole team should move with them. If de Jong is going to drop into effectively a centre-back position, that centre-back should be comfortable rotating into space, and that rotation should be automatic. But as of right now, with Andreas Christensen in that position, neither of those things seem to be the case. And recently, Xavi's actually started de Jong at centre-back to mitigate this whole problem. But this is just the left-hand side. Over on the right, you've got a similar issue due to Barca's lack of versatile right-back, which means we've mostly seen Koundé or Araujo deputise there, players that aren't really equipped to rotate and take up the more offensive positions. And you've all seen the resulting asymmetry of Barca's attack. The right-hand side is used almost exclusively as an outlet. In fact, you very rarely see the types of combinations that are possible with a more versatile profile at right-back. That limits the winger, it isolates the interior, and it creates a more static shape. And over time, these gradual changes have led to far less clarity in Barca's structure and possession. So this image is from the 21-22 season. It's symmetrical. On both sides we have a winger hugging the touchline, plus an advanced mobile number 8. Everyone is forming triangles for the sake of passing angles and rotation. But here, in a recent game against Getafe, we've actually lost a lot of that. Fewer triangles, players are isolated, and the structure is far less clear overall. So this is the positional play problem, and overcoming it, I think, will determine the success or failure of this season at Barcelona. So before I end, I actually want to suggest a couple of ways to solve this problem. And firstly, I think it is partially a squad building issue. The addition of a versatile right-back, for example, would massively transform the balance of this team and allow the players on that side to be more dynamic and unpredictable. But it isn't just a squad problem, it's also about Xavi coaching and improving the players he already has. If that means adjusting Frenkie de Jong's role, for example, then that's something you've got to consider. If it means working with Balde to improve the timing of his movement and adding another dimension to his game from a deeper position, then that's what the coach is paid his money for. In the past, Xavi has favoured players who have shown more natural understanding of this system, but if this is the philosophy you're sticking with, then it's just your job to get everyone on the same level. Regardless, this positional play problem is, I think, the major barrier to success for Barca this season. There's a lot of quality in the squad, and the direction is at the very least clear, but only time will tell whether all that potential is realised or not. I've covered quite a lot of ground in this video, so if you've got any questions, feel free to leave them in the comments. I'll try to reply to as many as possible. Let me know whether you agree with this diagnosis of Barcelona's football. What do you think of this positional play problem? Is it an exaggeration? I'd love to hear your thoughts. Obviously, I'll be checking in with this team throughout the season, so we'll see how they get on. But until the next one, guys, thanks so much for watching. Appreciate all the support, and I hope to see you soon. Take care.